All right, thank you and welcome to our regular meeting of the Madera.
Hold on a second.
Okay. All right. Thank you and welcome to our regular meeting of the Madera County Transportation Commission Board Policy. It is now 3 o'clock. We'll get this meeting to order. Sandy, can you please take roll?
Commissioner Zachariah,
Here.
Commissioner Ahmed, absent. Commissioner Poitras.
Yes.
Commissioner McCauley.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers is absent. Chair Rodriguez.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, so let's please rise. I'll ask Supervisor Commissioner Poitras to lead us on the pledge.
All right, very good. Thank you. And let us salute our flag. Great salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect harmony.
Yes.
Predominant church choirs. Right.
It doesn't happen like that
Not
on a Zoom call.
Right.
Everybody's all over the place.
With that, thank you again, Supervisor Commissioner Poitras, for leading us on the pledge. Move on to the public comment. At this time is made available for comment from the public on matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda. Each speaker will have limited to 3 minutes. Attention is called to the fact that the board is prohibited by law from taking any substantive action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the board does not respond to public comment at this time. It is requested that no comments be made during this period on items that are on today's agenda. Members of the public may comment on any item that is on today's agenda when the item is called and should notify the chairperson of their desire to address the board when that item is called. Do we have any members from the public wishing to make any comments?
None online.
None online, okay. Seeing none, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment and move on to MCTC sitting as a Transportation Policy Committee. These are consent items. All items on the consent are routine and non-controversial by MCTC staff and will be approved by one motion if no member of the committee or public wishes to comment or ask questions. If comments or discussions are desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in a listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the committee concerning the item before taking any action. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to pull any items? Any members of this commission? Okay, close that public comment. Bring that back. Okay,
Second.
we have a motion to approve by Commissioner McCauley, second by Commissioner Poitras. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carried. All right. Moving on to item 5, transportation action discussion items. Item 5A, State Route 233 corridor plan. Mr. Dillon.
Thank you, sir. The State Route 233 corridor plan has been finalized by Caltrans District 6 System Planning. This has been worked on, I believe, we started a little less than 2 years ago on this. They do these system corridor plans for all of our state routes that go through our counties. The 233 plan I was hoping that was Alec Kimmel.
For the
But
record,
he's looking at me.
I know, it's just.
Did you want to-
Security.
So, District 6
Mr.
doesn't have
Chair,
a presentation they want to give, but I think the presenter isn't quite here yet.
So that's what I was just gonna mention is that, could we maybe move this item
Sure.
until,
Yeah, I'd like to give Alec Kimmel, who's the project manager, a chance to tell you about it. He prepared the presentation. It'd be a lot better if he did than I at this point.
no worries. At this time, we'll recognize that Commissioner Rogers is in the meeting. So we'll go ahead and table this for
until he arrives,
till he arrives, okay? So let's move on to item 5B, Rural Counties Task Force Rural Induced Demand Study.
Okay, thank you. Am I not sharing the correct? Maybe I have to reshare the screen to the different presentation. That might be great. Let's stop sharing and then reshare.
Get it over.
I know, exactly. There we go. But that's good.
Thank you. Yes, item 5B is about the rural counties task force induced demand study. So the rural counties task force, I just want to start by describing who that group is. That's comprised of 26 rural counties throughout the state of California with a population less than 250,000, but no urban areas with more than 50,000 people. So us at Madera County, we're not part of that. We are an MPO. We're a little bit larger, especially on this, having city of Madera be over 50,000 people. However, we regularly participate with the Rural Counties Task Force. They tackle issues of statewide importance that are very similar to the issues we have here. We're very rural in nature, MPO. So this induced demand study tackles induced demand, but what is induced demand? Induced demand is the idea that when you add more capacity onto the roadway, more people are going to drive it for an array of different factors. This can lead to worse congestion, issues with displacing one type of travel to another. As you add more capacity on the road, you might take away from other options people are using. This concept is mostly seen in larger cities though, where you add road capacity quickly. And as you said, there's so much demand for transportation in large cities that when you add new capacity, it fills up really quick. So some background about induced demand, we would have to talk about SB 743. Senate Bill 743 is about analysis of VMT, in particular, replacing analysis of congestion with vehicle miles traveled as we assess the impacts of our transportation investments. This does have ramifications for a lot of state guidance that's out there that we have to utilize as part of our planning process. The CAPTI program, which directs the type of funding that will go towards transportation projects, as well as the transportation analysis framework. California Air Resource Board is concerned with induced demand for projects like our regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. So there's a lot of factors that really come into play with the way we do our work now as we switch from focusing on congestion and just more on the miles driven. Rearrange my Zoom window here. It's blocking my notes. There we go. So this is a concern for rural areas because the methodology behind how you analyze VMT is a little suspect as you get into smaller communities. And that can be a real issue with hampering your ability to get secure funding for projects. And there's a lot of projects that have different relationship with VMT in rural areas. You know, we don't always plan for congestion when we do these projects. There's other important issues and goals in our region related to goods movement, safety, evacuation, and emergency services. It's not only about congestion. And that could unfairly disadvantage us within state programs where there's a heavy focus on VMT, where obviously one size doesn't fit all with the VMT we have here versus the large metro areas in the state. So this study had several key objectives they wanted to look at. They wanted to review the literature around the VMT policies within the state, as well as the guidance themselves, the documents that guide us on the process we use for planning. They also examined some case studies using the methodology that is recommended to us now, as we are in a 743 world, SB 743 VMT analysis world. And they also made some technical recommendations based on the findings. So let's talk about a few of those findings. One thing in particular, as I just mentioned, there's limited degrees of congestion in rural areas compared to urban areas. A lot of the times we're not always planning for that, as I mentioned. There's a lot of other things we need to consider that have, you know, our regional context, what the context here is in areas like the San Joaquin Valley and Madera County. Also, travel behavior. There's a much different travel behavior. I alluded to the fact that there's a high demand for all modes of travel in large urban areas. But in rural areas, it's different and there's not as much access to different modes. The route between two cities, there might be one viable option. There's not a red line between Fresno and Madera. There's not an airport between Fresno and Madera that anyone's going to consider practical to use. The train station, yes, but it does have its limits too as to where it goes. And the public transit systems in the San Joaquin Valley and on highly dense urban areas do struggle to operate effectively because of that lack of density and access to all the different locations, as we're not built in a dense manner. We're built very flat. Some additional findings were related to land use patterns in urban areas and how they differ from metro areas, especially as you build new infrastructure. And then a higher focus on those transit issues I just mentioned, that it's hard to have effective transit, especially in rural areas. So they become a less viable option and really funnel people towards these main corridors that we have to use every day for going to school, to work, to emergency services, to hospitals, and so on. In terms of the literature review, they found that there is a lot of data about induced VMT in big cities. They're looking at places like Chicago, Houston, San Jose, LA. And then a lot of the recommendations they've made for analyzing VMT, they make a lot of sense for those areas. But as you look into smaller rural areas, the kind of projects we have in counties like ours or in the San Joaquin Valley, there's really not as much to work with. And a lot of the tools and methodology behind the guidance doesn't really have that context for an area like ours. Looking at some of the case studies here, they examined an array of rural projects throughout the state in non-MPO counties and MPO counties as well, like outside of the urban areas in Kern or San Luis Obispo, Fresno. They looked at using the recommended methodology, and they looked at a 3-year period, 10-year period, and a 20-year period. And a consistent result of that is that the methodology we're asked to use overcalculates how much VMT our projects would generate. In fact, in almost all of those, except for one notable exception, that is the South Fresno project. Some of you might remember was completed in the late 90s between Lemoore and Fresno. I was the only one that really exceeded and said, yep, there's a ton of VMT that's been induced. They did dig a little deeper on that one to figure out why. And that was at the same time that the Lemoore Naval Air Station was chosen by the Department of Defense to have the FA-18 Super Hornet base for the West Coast there. And they had a major expansion of the Air Force Base, 5,000 homes, I believe. That happened while they were building that project. And then there was, I forget the exact number, but it's about 500 new slot machines and 300 hotel rooms that opened at Tachi Palace. So that tourism draw also made that the significant outlier out of their case studies that they examined. You can see it there at the bottom. So talking about that methodology, it utilizes a tool that was developed by UC Davis, funded by the state of California, called the NCST calculator. I did draw up a little example for us in Madera County. It essentially says, are you adding lanes to the state highway in your county? Well, if so, then this is how much VMT you are going to create. I did a Madera County example with 10 miles of added capacity, and the tool says we're going to generate 28.4 million additional VMT annually. So that's a big number. I think that equates to about 78,000 extra vehicle miles per day, every day of the year. That's a big number because of SB 743, we have to mitigate for that. We have to find a way to displace that amount of thousands of miles of travel through other measures. And you have a lot more options in a Burbank or in a San Jose for mitigation measures. In the San Joaquin Valley, we're really limited on what those mitigation measures can be. So that creates a real challenge. So finally, the study did have some recommendations. These are harder to explain. It is a very technical document, but they really wanted to drive home that there's changes that need to be considered in the way we analyze VMT in particular. And there are some specific examples they give that are a little bit in the weeds for my presentation, but they're about addressing the calculator, addressing some of the methodology that is used, some of the case studies, making sure we have up-to-date, more recent information on things, like the projects we looked at previously, things that we can look at the results because they were built maybe 15 years ago. So we could apply those same standards and understand better with a regional context towards rural areas of a different approach that makes more sense, that takes into account our local context, our local conditions. There's recommendations to change the state guidance. A lot of those documents I mentioned, they could probably use an update that looks at more in-depth information for rural areas like this study as created. Those being the CAPTI, the SB 743 guidance from the Office of Planning and Research and the Governor's Office, some of the Caltrans documents like the Transportation Analysis Framework. A lot of those would probably benefit from having that additional context because all the studies that supported the current methodology, Houston, Philadelphia, Seattle, they don't necessarily fit when we talk about a Mariposa or a Raymond or a small community like that. And additionally, there was extensive, there's a significant amount of change they could see with the NCST calculator, the calculator I mentioned, state developed through UC Davis. And it's all about bringing more context to the information you give it. Not just saying Madera County, 10 miles, what's my number, but Madera County, 10 miles, this regional context, this setting, these project details, so we can get more accurate information about the actual impacts of VMT that we could expect that are realistic. So some of the next steps, disseminate this information, this study, sort of like what we're doing now. We're not part of the Rural Counties Task Force. We weren't the project managers, but this is still important. It's important for our decision makers to understand that this information is out there and the impacts it has to the type of planning for transportation we do in a county like ours. And then work with our partners to develop new policies, new recommendations, assess our projects through a new lens, advocate for funding that can address the findings that are in this study. So we're potentially not barred from accessing important funding for our projects that we need. And of course, monitor and measure implementation impacts as always, so that in 15 years we can learn more and maybe change more again, as things always change. But this was just a high-level overview of this plan. We thought it was important to bring this to you in light of the projects that we need to deliver in our own county. They're not just in urban areas. We have a lot of state highways that go through our communities outside of the urban area. So that's going to conclude my presentation. There's no action asked. This is just for information.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Appreciate the presentation. I'll bring it to my board. Do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Dylan. Great presentation. I was just going to mention, when I saw CAPTI 2.0 kicked out the final draft, it was January 2025. I did note that there's a action S2.2 on page 22 of the document, and it does acknowledge that one-size-fits-all strategy may not be suitable for rural projects. The existing research on induced travel demand and VMT reduction is primarily from studies conducted in urban and metropolitan areas where highway capacity has been added with the goal to relieve congestion. And it mentioned that implementation of these strategies in rural areas require more nuanced guidance given the limited research. And this action will commit Caltrans to conducting any necessary additional studies and technical research. And then there's that SB 768 that was passed. Believe it's causing CARB to conduct a study to further study that impact VMT has on rural areas. So that was one of our points that we were advocating for, is that, the current definition of VMT is not imposed on us until this new study comes out. So that's great. So anyway, it's great to see this thing attacked from all sides, and that there is some acknowledgement by CalSTA that analysis was flawed.
And I don't know, I can't say definitely, but I do know that the conversations about what you're talking about to do that additional work as this study was being developed, it might have spurred that along a little bit. Because there's
Right.
been a lot of discussion about this study and those that you're talking about
It
right
all
there.
helps, exactly. It's kind of nice seeing parallel efforts taking place and they kind of build towards that effort. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Poitras. Anyone else? Dylan, I'd like to just make a comment, just to kind of summarize what I've learned about the VMT and SB 743. So in a nutshell, what this legislation is saying, especially SB 743, is that for you to create any capacity projects, you have to look at the cost of mitigating for that because of the induced traffic. And for what you said earlier is that that calculation estimates that for capacity building down to 99, we estimate to have over 78,000 vehicles miles traveled, when in reality, those vehicles are already traveling. All we're doing is adding an additional lane to be able to put a safety component so that more traffic can flow freely, but it doesn't necessarily interpret that you're going to have more traffic. And I think this is where the misconception is, that now we're going to have this induced, therefore you have to spend a third, if not a half of your budget that you have to finance this project to mitigate for something that, in my opinion, doesn't make sense for our rural communities here. Does that make sense? I mean, I just want to bring that context here so that my colleagues are up to speed, but this is what we've learned. And what we're advocating for is that when you're bringing these specific Senate bills, it's not the one size fits all. What fits in Burbank or what fits out in the Bay Area, you got to consider that these rural counties have more routes like evacuation they have a more meaningful purpose than trying to mitigate for something that doesn't really affect us here locally. So I just want to bring that in a nutshell, because that's what I've gained and that's what we advocated. Now, SB 768, was that Caballero bill?
Yes.
And that one is to counter this 743 so that they give us an opportunity to weigh in that our projects are not necessarily what you see in these North or South Bay arenas. So thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it now that I'm starting to gain traction on it. I mean, alongside our Supervisor Poitras here, I know that we're doing good with the Regional Policy Council. We're also trying to see if we can advocate to add policy there to make sure that you look at the San Joaquin Valley as a different than you do with these other Bay Area regions. So thank you again. If there's no other questions, I'll open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public? Okay, we'll close.
I'm going to switch over back to 5A. I think
Yes.
we are ready. Okay, great.
So again, 5A, State Route 233 corridor plan. Mr. Kimball, did I hear that correctly? Kimball? No, for some reason I was thinking of the famous singer from the Toto, so I apologize. Oh, Jimmy, there you go.
Famous singer. And then that's right.
Jimmy. Hey, some good news.
It was,
Okay, so back to 5A and the completion of our District 6 State Route 233, excuse me, corridor plan. Alec Dillon, project manager. You can use that if you want. We could do.
Yeah, actually, if I could just move this over.
Just that easy.
Meanwhile, we'll put a song from Toto.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. That's classic.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. And I'm very pleased today to be able to present our final completed and published State Route 233 corridor plan. This was an effort that we developed in partnership, transitioning from one kind of vision document for our route to another. This is a short but important route. I want to go ahead and just do a very brief presentation so that everybody can get on to the rest of the agenda here. So starting out, just to sort of frame it, what is a corridor plan? We have corridor planning guidance in Caltrans and also are working off of guidance that's been provided to us by the California Transportation Commission. And I'll quote that guidance just a few lines here. A corridor can basically just be defined as a linear geographic area with one or more modes of transportation facilitating movement of people and goods. It supports the economy, connects communities, has origins, destinations, land use, place types, environmental features, and looks at existing and future development that surround the transportation infrastructure. So essentially, it's beyond just the bounds of the pavement of the highway. We're also looking at parallel facilities and looking at other modes that contribute to the whole of the linear geographic area. It's a little bit different than what we used to do with our transportation concept reports, and that's the transition that I made mention to earlier. It relies on collaboration between Caltrans districts and their regional partners to identify and address opportunities on these key transportation corridors, which culminates in a clear vision for identified improvements, while also recognizing the positive and negative impacts of any changes over time. A corridor plan would analyze how a corridor is performing and estimate it for the future. Why is it performing that way? And recommending projects and strategies to achieve goals and objectives. So in order to facilitate the transition between the two documents, my branch, the system planning branch in Caltrans District 6, had altered our process that we were adhering to for the transportation concept reports to align ourselves better with state and Caltrans guidance, including CalSTA's Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, the strategic plan, and of course the guidebook. Going forward, we're committed to a greater level of engaging with our partners in order to update these vision documents. And as such, we held regular meetings to aid in the development of this particular corridor plan for State Route 233 with yourselves, so your own agency, Madera Transportation Commission, and as well as the city of Chowchilla, and several others who we invited, the California Trucking Association, San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, Chambers of Commerce, Farm Bureau, and community-based organizations. So first, a little bit about the environment. State Route 233 is less than 4 miles in total length. It runs a diagonal from southwest to northeast and provides a connection between State Routes 152 and 99. It's well known for, as you see in the picture, the palm trees, which line both sides of the roadway. These palm trees, some spaced less than 50 feet apart, were originally planted in the year 1913. In November of 1989, these trees were recognized as a point of historical interest in California, and that's a status that provides some limited protection under the California Environmental Quality Act. Sorry, I skipped ahead a slide for myself. From the connection with State Route 152, the route exists as a 2-lane conventional highway for approximately the first 2 miles, with a somewhat rural initial section. As it goes through the city of Chowchilla, the highway is mostly a 4-lane facility with left turn pockets, 2-way turn lanes, and other improvements. It's known locally as Robertson Boulevard and is developed on each side, connecting ultimately to State Route 99 via an interchange on the eastern end. Now, collaboration with Madera County Transportation Commission and other partner agencies, we identified some considerations in the corridor plan for soil subsidence and also for cleanup sites. In addition to serving as a main street through the city of Chowchilla, State Route 233 is currently a Surface Transportation Assistance Act truck route. So navigating the vision of incorporating more complete streets elements on State Route 233 within those constraints and in consideration of its status as a truck route is something that we hope to be able to work in partnership with our local partner agencies, including the Transportation Commission here. So the city of Chowchilla, along with Caltrans, recently have supported active transportation and complete streets projects along the route. And the final 233 corridor plan provides an overview of these and other goals and concepts. I'm not going to go over everything here today, but I do show here, if you can see on the slide, both a list of proposed improvements for complete streets, class 4 bike lanes, class 2 bike lanes. These are just concepts that we want to hopefully explore in the future as opportunities that we might want to have for projects with various funding, as also showing from the other efforts by our local partners, some studies of rerouting trucks in and around the city of Chowchilla to try to mitigate some of those, some of the issues that might come up with complete streets improvements Boulevard. And finally, projects that are in the pipeline or do have some programming attached to them. We show here a series on State Route 233 on this map through the city of Chowchilla. These include some ongoing complete improvements, which are shown here on the map as numbers 3 and 4, as well as interchange improvements at State Route 99 and 233, shown here as number 6, and potentially a new interchange in the future to accommodate development that will be taking place east of Route 99, shown here as number 7. And I have more notes on all of those projects, but I won't belabor the point. I'll take any questions now. I will add, just as a closing note, that we do not have the State Route 233 corridor plan publicly posted on a website, but if you would like a copy, please contact either Caleb or myself. We're happy to provide you with either an electronic copy or a hard copy as desired.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. And again, my apologies for mispronouncing your name there. But I do know that Mr. Chowchilla himself is here. You may want to have some questions.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rogers?
One of the things that is interesting, I don't know if you want to put that map back up there.
Sure. The project map?
Yeah, that's good enough. If you notice where the pink balloon is there, I think it says 1 in it.
Yes.
That's Road 16 coming from 152. That is predominantly the road that trucks use to get to the city's 233 route. They do not come off on 152 and Robertson Boulevard consistently. They predominantly go down Road 16. And that road gets pounded with traffic, and it's a residential road. There's some commercial on there, very little, but mostly residential. And those trucks drive through there at pretty good speeds, most of the time 60 miles an hour. They're loaded down, and they beat that road up. We just refinished it from 152 to, was it 24 and a half? No, 25 and some change.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2.5 miles, I think, is what we did. Part of it was paid by the city, I believe a $500,000, and the rest was paid by the county. And I believe it was designed for heavy traffic, for commercial traffic. In fact, I think I emphasized that when we went through the design process. I'm not real sure on that, but it's a real problem. It's a quandary because what I'd like to see happen is for ultimately them to get off at 152 and Robertson Boulevard, which is 233, and make their trek that way. Is there a way we could put signage emphasizing to truck traffic, use this exit to proceed to 99 north? Because that's what they want to do. If they want to go south, they come down 152 and head south on 99, it's not a problem because of the interchange. But when when they go all the way through down to Road 16, that road just gets pounded. And that is also the predominant residential entrance and exit for the city. When you're going to Fresno or you're going to Madera, that is the predominant, or even Gilroy or those places east of us there or west of us. That's the predominant exit and entrance for city, for people who live in the city to come in. And very few people that I know of, unless you live in Green Hills. Green Hills is another ball game, but which is on the other side of the freeway. It's east of the 99. So it just presents a traffic nightmare at times, and a lot of issues with the truck traffic. Anyway, pointing that out, something to think about. Glad to see this come up, by the way.
Thank you so much for the comment, Commissioner. I wasn't aware of the truck traffic on 16, actually. So that's very good to hear. And Caleb, maybe you and I can reach out to some of our signage folks and see what can be done there. Because I don't believe that 16 is designated as a truck route. I could be wrong about that, but
I don't think it is.
yeah,
It just certainly gets used that way.
very good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd just like to mention that if you're not aware of the truck traffic, are you aware of the cattle traffic?
Sure, there is cattle traffic.
Stampede.
Once a year, there's a stampede through there, so you need to be aware of these things. I don't know, it's, one of these things.
The one thing that I remember about Chowchilla being a young kid, out of Merced County was that we held our annual parade there. Chowchilla had held it, and that's where you walk through down Robertson Boulevard, aligned alongside those palms. The only other city that I remember that has that similar is Patterson. I'm not sure if they still have those palms up
Right.
there, but
Yeah, they do.
yeah, interesting. I'd like to thank you again for the presentation. Do we have any other comments or questions from my commission?
One thing about the palms, I got phone calls that PG&E was whacking away at some of them. I don't know if that's the case, but that the palms are a real source of pride for that community. They really, those palms are like sacred. Do not touch the palms. There's two types of palms. There's canary palm and the fan palm. And at one point, the canary palm had some kind of a disease problem developing. And I'm wondering, since that's under the purview of Caltrans, and I know they make sure that they're cut regularly because when storms develop, those palms are like flying bombs when they go off. But is there a plan on in the future? Those palms aren't going to live forever. Is there a plan to replace them as they disease out or as they die out, or is there a plan for that? And then at the same time, are we checking them for problems and mitigating that? And I do get questions quite often on the trimming. So
I was going to say that would be a great follow-up question if you can let Commissioner Rogers know what kind of plan, but if there is something of that nature, I'd like to hear that. Did you want to add
yeah,
something?
it's
Sorry.
kind of a.
No, I think that's a great point. We're in planning, but we can talk with, landscape architects, and there are folks at Caltrans who specialize in this type of thing. And
Super.
it's a good thing. It's a good way for us to ensure that we're making those connections and planning and being able to provide that information.
So I'm going to ask my colleague Zachariah, will have to return those chainsaws.
Yeah.
We're not gonna-
Just don't touch the Christmas tree, right?
Plan. Abort the plan.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to mention to Commissioner Rogers, they'll actually replace those trees 10-1 because there's only 2 trees that have to come out here in 99 and they're going to give 20 trees to mitigate the
Oh,
two
wow.
trees coming out.
Wow.
Isn't that neat?
That is.
Something.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
again, Mr. Kimball. Appreciate your presentation. I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time?
Leave it online.
All right, then we'll close public comment. Thank you again. This is an informational. So we'll move on to item 5C, State Legislative Outlook, Madera Advocating Day in Sacramento recap, and the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council Valley Boys Trip recap.
Yes, this item is three parts. The first part, we're gonna discuss some of the current bills that are in circulation. And then we will also jump into Madera Advocacy Day that we had in March, as well as the San Joaquin Valley Voice Trip in Sacramento that we participated in last week. But first, the bills. As you're all aware, the deadline was the end of February. We have Mitch Weiss with us from Corey Consulting today. There are some bills that we know that we can take action on now, that we can either oppose or support. But there are other bills that could be either two-year bills or bills that we need to watch. I would not want to propose a recommendation knowing that there may be some future changes to it, and then we've already had a position on a current bill. So in past, we never really took positions on bills, but since we've retained consulting, Corey Consulting, he's guided us through some of those that we can proceed with in supporting and opposing. And so with us today, Mitch, if you can explain some of the bills that we have listed here. I don't know if you have them in front of you, but the AB 259, AB 267, and so on and so forth. If you can give us a briefing.
I certainly can. I'll go over at a high level and can drill down on any of the bills that you'd like. First of all, the matrix itself contains 36 bills which we identified of interest. And the recommended positions, we recommend 9 positions. 6 are support, 3 are opposed. And then I can quickly break them into categories. 2 of the support positions are bills related to the Brown Act to provide flexibility on meetings of various types. There are 2 bills related to state highway system pilot programs that Caltrans would implement. One is a speed safety pilot program, and the other is a quick build pilot program. Another support position is recommended for a bill extending current CEQA exemptions for active transportation projects and also some transit projects. And then there is a recommended support position for a bill extending a current sales tax exemption for the purchase of zero emission buses. For the opposed positions, 2 of the bills that we recommend opposed positions are related to gas tax suspensions. And the third opposed position is related to suspending high-speed rail funding for 2 years. With that, I'm happy to provide some more detail on any of the bills that you'd like.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you for that brief presentation. Do we have anyone from our commission here wishing to ask any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mitch, I just have a question on the HSR opposition bills. Is there any, are the authors fairly staunch on their opposition? Is there any kind of movement maybe within the bills that needs to be worked on? For instance, I know Tagnapaw, his bill is not necessarily, against high-speed rail. It's more about oversight, and I haven't quite seen the language on these opposition bills to see if there's anything in there, or is it just to take the funding and allocate it some other place?
Yeah, the one that we're recommending an opposed position on is one that is specific to funding, not the oversight ones. It's specific to funding, and it would be removing the funding for 2 years and giving it to the Air Resources Board to do some other things with it. Frankly, I that doesn't have a lot of legs. It's not going to get a lot of support. If anything, what we're hearing is a desire, and this gets into a little bit into the cap and trade. I met today with several legislators who were involved in cap and trade discussions, and part of what I'm hearing is not just a desire by high-speed rail to get a fixed amount rather than a fixed percentage, but perhaps to have a very significant increase in the amount that they would be getting. So if the administration's that, they're giving us more money, I don't think legislation to cut the funding is really going to go anywhere.
Very good. Thank you.
You, Commissioner Poitras, any other comments or questions? If not, then I do want to reiterate what our Director Taylor said is, in many cases in the past, I don't think we took a position on these because we weren't really advocating, but now knowing that we're a valley that sometimes gets overlooked, it's important for us to make sure that we fight for our share of the funding as well. And through retaining of a Corey consulting, that kind of gets us up in the conversation to where we now can be players at the table. And I think it's important for us to recognize that this isn't just a Madera County, but it's a San Joaquin Regional Policy Council, again, aligning and retaining Mr. Corey. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'll bring it back to the public if there's any comments. This is informational only.
No comments online.
All right, moving on.
And that was for, it's kind of
There's-
3 parts.
Yes, you did say that.
There is an action item for the item that Mitch just discussed. And so it would be to
That we're
support and
supporting. Yes.
oppose the bills that were listed. And then the next part of the agenda item is you did in early March, we went on a Madera Advocacy Day in Sacramento. Joining me along my side was Chair Rodriguez and Vice Chair Poitras. And I felt like it was a very successful visit. We met with some legislatures and key executive staffs, and we told our stories, provided our messaging, left them with information related to the current projects that we are working on here in Madera, discussed some of our needs moving forward, and asks, and mainly, support when requesting support when needed. But normally I add these items onto the agenda. This is the second part of the third one, of the 3 parts, is to allow those who attend an opportunity to provide feedback on our day in Sacramento. So with that, if our chair and vice chair have any additional feedback or words of wisdom as we on our day
I'll
in
leave
Sacramento.
Commissioner Poitras to start off the
Sure.
comments.
That'd be great. And it's our executive director is a little bit of an understatement as far as meeting with some key legislative staff. We actually met with the CalSTA Transportation Secretary, Tokes Omashakin. So I thought that was a really good meeting, and we had a chance to discuss some of the things that he was concerned about as far as our rail. And I think he received some information from us that was, he was surprised about, but it was good information. And then we had a chance to talk to him about our priorities, and he seemed very supportive. And then we actually met with Mitch's the person that now has Mitch's former job, and the CTC executive director, Tanisha Taylor. And so that was a really good meeting, and some very good information, good insight, I think, that we received from her. And of course, we've always had a very good relationship there, and met with a couple of legislators early on. Member Tagnapah is, it's interesting. He's very new, but I believe that he's open to hearing. I think as time goes on, he's going to perhaps, become more pragmatic about things. Right now, he's, considering his district and so forth, he's getting a lot of interesting information and has developed a interesting philosophical mindset. But again, as time goes on, so it was a really good meeting with him, and then ended the day with Marlon Flournoy from Caltrans. So yes, it was, I think, very productive, and met with the right people. And I appreciate Mitch, you and your firm setting up these appointments, and I was very satisfied and very pleased. Thank you.
So we're talking about the lobby day only or Valley Voice in general?
This one's just the Madera Lobby Day.
Okay, well, I was absent that day, but
Oh.
the following one.
Oh, my goodness,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah. So it was just the three of us that went, that's Corey. and-
See, your presence, you know, you got such a
See, I
big,
thought you were with me.
it's this,
I'm always there.
it's this
You were
aura
in
that you
spirit.
have, you know, we thought you were there.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I apologize. The Sacramento Valley Voice was last week, and when we say Sacramento Valley Voice, that's with all 8 counties. As far south as Kern, far north is San Joaquin. 2 elected officials sit as members on the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council, and that is our chair, Councilmember Rodriguez, and Vice Chair Supervisor Rob Poitras, and they both attended as well. And again, we met with, that was a packed day of meeting with staffs and legislatures, and representatives, providing, where, information and our priorities where we speak in one voice. And so with that, if you'd like to share your thoughts.
Thank you, Director Taylor. I'll give my colleague here the same opportunity and then I'll follow up. Yes.
There you go. Yeah, I think I counted, I think we met with like 9 different offices.
Yeah.
You know, from the north to the south, and so it pretty well took in everybody. And you know, we were able to, I think, accurately and efficiently and effectively communicate our message. It was well received, and yeah, I was a little bit surprised that we were able to get it all in, but I think it was well run and again, you know, well received.
Well, I mean, and I'll just quickly brief on like what roles we had, right? We each were assigned a certain role or talking points to be able to talk to a lot of these legislators. And like Supervisor Poitras said, we had an opportunity to meet with not only some of the assembly members that represent all of our Central Valley, some of the representatives. Assembly member Tagnapau did go back and forth regarding the ordinance in Fresno State, right? So he had you around for a
Yeah,
while.
he's,
But
yeah, poor guy, he couldn't go
Yeah.
to Cal Poly. So.
and as he said, Young has pragmatic approaches, but I still think that he's getting his feet wet. And essentially, he'll realize how important certain projects are to our valley. And I think, with his help, we can certainly see a lot of his support as well. One of the things that I concentrated on was, again, truck weighted feeds. Obviously, I rehearsed this so good that I wanted to bring it back. But typically what that is, there was a time and place where the state said, we're going to collect money for these weighted fees through, I'm not sure if that was through DMV or what have you, but either way, those fees were, for the purpose of those fees were to go back into our state highway system. Well, since 2011, those fees have been diverted back to pay the debt service, right? And as a general fund, they go back into the general fund for the state. And we were asking that they appropriate some of those funds back into some of our state highway systems so we can complete our projects. Because as you know, we are a self-help county that, we pass our own measures to tax ourselves to help us fund those gaps that we don't have. And this is another form of funding that we can utilize to help us with these projects. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So one of the things that we advocated for was, again, get some of those funds diverted back to some of our projects so we can complete some of our projects, because it costs us more money, especially with these very onerous Senate bills like 743. It's harder for us to get that going. But I think some of the data that we were projecting over and over was that, it's been about since 1950 since we really updated our highway system. And now there's over 27 million licensed drivers. And I think if anyone can tell you that, it's Supervisor Poitras. He'll continuously tell you that at one time we had so many million people, but now we have more. And again, those are licensed drivers. So we don't know what's driving through our corridors or through our state highway system. But either way, this was just one of the platforms that we utilize to advocate for these specific needs that we need in our Central Valley. Not sure if you want to add your component of it, but I thought yours was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, I mainly talked about the VMT issue, 743, and the Senate bill that is out there. And so kind of what I talked about earlier, as well as the gas tax, the replacement of the gas tax that we pay at the pump. It's diminishing as time goes on. And my purpose was to present not necessarily one approach. There's a couple of them out there, but it's more about we need to get an alternative regardless of what it is. And so I kind of wanted to give equal footing to the methods that are out there, as well as anything else that comes up that makes sense, so that we can keep our roads from failing. And because the more they fail, the more money, exponentially more money it's going to take to repair them.
So in a summary, that was pretty much what we had for that day. I know there was a lot of up and down, but really truly just having that platform to be able to, again, advocate for the policies and the regional needs of our communities. That being said, that's all we have. And again, yes, Mitch.
Yeah, I just, I just want to reiterate the importance of those kind of events. I just had lunch with Secretary Omashakin and several of his staff, and he emphasized how important those type of visits is and how much he appreciates them. He acknowledged that he gets to Los Angeles a lot, he gets to the Bay Area a lot, he gets to San Diego a lot, but he doesn't get to the Central Valley very often, and he doesn't get to Madera very often. So it's really important, and he really appreciated us coming to him and telling him where, what was important to us.
And Mitch, on top of that, when I left, I reminded him that, I don't know what floor he's on, what the 15th floor or something of that building, but I reminded him the first time I met him was in the bottom of Cottonwood Creek, for the ribbon cutting or the groundbreaking for that project. And he was right there. So it was really great.
Thank you, Mitch. And again, I appreciate you say that, because then, we know that this body has allowed both Commissioner Poitras and myself to go out there and represent. And I hope you continue to support us, especially through our term that we finish out to the Regional Policy Council, but meeting with folks like Mitch, Gus, and all these legislators to be able to advocate. Thank you. That being said, I know we do have an action item to support and oppose these bills. Do we have any members from the public again? Any?
None online.
Okay, so I'll bring it back, entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner McCauley, second from Commissioner Rogers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Moving on to MCTC, sitting as Madera County Transportation Commission. Item 6, reaffirm all actions taken while sitting as a Transportation Policy Committee. Do I have a motion?
We'll move.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Poitras, second from Commissioner Zachariah. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, administrative consent items. Do we have any member wishing to pull any items from the consent? Public?
Seeing none online.
All right, bring it back.
Move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Poitras, second from Commissioner McCauley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Right, motion carries. Item 8, we have no administrative discussion items, so we'll move on to MCTC, sitting as the Madera County 2006 Transportation Authority. Item 9, these are the consent items. Do we have anyone here wishing to pull any consent? No? Public? All right, bring it back.
Move to approve.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Rogers, second from Commissioner McCauley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Moving on to item 10. These are the action items. Item 10A, Measure T, Citizens Oversight Committee Member Appointment.
Mr. Chair, so we have a vacancy in Supervisorial District 4 for the Measure T Citizens Oversight Committee. We have received one application from Santos Garcia, and the selection committee, which is staff, would like to we'd like to recommend appointment of Mr. Garcia as the Citizens Oversight Committee member representing District 4.
Okay, this is an action item. We have any comments, questions from our commission? Seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment. Close public comment, bring that back. Entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Okay,
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Poitras, second from Commissioner McCauley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Do we have someone in our
And
audience?
Santos Garcia is joining us as well.
Well, awesome. Mr. Garcia, thank you again for taking the time to be part of the Citizens Oversight Committee, and congratulations. Oh.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you very much for considering my approval for this committee. I look forward to working with you and the rest of the committee members. And I'll do as much as I can to assist you in the work, in the endeavors that we look forward to making sure for Madera County. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Mr. Garcia, for taking on this role. Really appreciate your dedication. That being said, we'll move on to other items. Item 11, miscellaneous. 11A, items from staff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have 6 items, but I'll go through them very quickly. The first item is just to draw your attention to item 4C, which is our newsletter, letting you know that our quarterly newsletter has been released and you should have received it by email as well. The next item is our April meeting. Just a reminder that our meeting is on the 4th Wednesday in April, not the 3rd Wednesday in April. We always note that it's the 3rd Wednesday, but due to how it lands on the calendar this year, it's on the 4th Wednesday. And I think Sandy sent out a calendar invite as well, so you should have that on your calendars. Also at the April meeting will be our Met Transit Needs public hearing. Just wanted to alert you to that. So we will have members from the public joining us to provide feedback and information related to our Met Transit needs. At this time, we anticipate no meeting in June. That could change, but right now there will be no meeting in June. But we will convene in July. The next item is the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council Conference will be held in April in Merced, April 9th through the 11th. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there will be a panel on the Rural Counties Task Force Induced Demand Study. And so that might be of interest. This is where we kind of learn and educate ourselves on some of the ongoing discussions that are out there in the transportation world. The next item I have here is, well, I was just going to say, I'm just so proud of our members for joining us in Sacramento, able to speak on behalf of Madera and the Valley. We've been trying to build or have been building our relationships with our representatives in Sacramento, in DC, and also executive staffs. And I think we are finally now, have paved the road, if you will, and we are well received. And I think our story and our messaging is getting clearer up in Sacramento. So I just wanted to say how, you're able to articulate the needs and priorities, and I definitely appreciate that. We like, hearing from you all when we're up in Sacramento, not staff. So, the next item is we failed to, or maybe didn't fail to, but we've had a lot going on in Sacramento these past couple of weeks, but we were also in Sacramento for a CalCog conference. And so I normally add an item on the agenda to provide feedback on the CalCog conference. And we had a number of staff that were in attendance, and then also Supervisor Poitras received the Poppy Award, which he probably can share with us on what that means, right? And so he was recognized for his work as it relates to his leadership in transportation, and as a former past chair of CalCog as well. And so I don't know if Troy wanted to add some comments related to his experience at the CalCog conference, provide some opportunity. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk, and so let staff speak. And if you wanted to speak, I know that Councilmember Rodriguez and Supervisor Poitras were in attendance. Caleb was in attendance. So, and as well as all staff, Natalia and Evelyn were there as well. So
I think the biggest takeaway why these conferences are so important for me is to connect with some of our peers and colleagues throughout the state. Because a lot of this, whether they're rural areas or urban areas, a lot of us deal with the same type of issues. And so being able to put, a face to a name and be able to have those one-on-one conversations at these conferences are really vital to the work that we do. Help us spurn ideas to bounce stuff off of what we're trying to tackle. And so it's very beneficial to go to these conferences. And that's what I enjoyed. And of course, you know, they have the Carl program. So they had a reception for all the Carl alumni, and Natalia graduated from this year's cohort and stuff. So that was enjoyable as well as for the CalCog conference.
Congratulations to Natalia.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Carla's a leadership program that CalCog offers.
And Caleb graduated as well.
Caleb graduated. Troy and others, Evelyn.
So Director Taylor, for the benefit of our latest commissioner here, can you please expand on COG and what that is as far as like what happens at CalCog?
The council, or CalCog, is a California Association of Governments, and it's a representative, it's got MPOs, regional transportation planning agencies, local transportation commission, even some measure self-help counties are all members of CalCog at one level or another. And we meet frequently to discuss, again, what we find in commonality related to transportation. A lot of it is directed around what you've been hearing today with SB 743, because we all are having to deal with mitigation for our projects and dealing with CARB and the VMT. So those are some issues in the bills of interest, like the Brown Act bills. Those are always discussed at the CalCog. Really just share what others are doing, take on any kind of platform issues that we feel that we need to move forward through Sacramento. There is a diversity in that because there's rural counties, and then you have the big four, which is Northern California and Southern California. And sometimes it's hard to find the commonality because one size does not fit all. So we can't all advocate in one voice, but at least we can all share where we're all coming from. And in those instances where we do share commonality, we try to speak in that one voice. And those are normally with air quality, CARB type of discussions. But it's the executive director you've heard here before is Bill Higgins. And we meet, there's a couple of committees. You have a board, which is made up statewide, and Supervisor Poitras represents Madera. And then you also have a couple of working groups, but one that's made up of the directors. So we have a director level that we meet, I think it's quarterly, and we hold a conference every year. And then they have subgroups that are working groups that work on technical issues. So,
Thank you. And not to overwhelm you with all these abbreviations, but this is what I've encountered, what I've learned. So MPO, Metropolitan Plan Organization, that's the Fed's term for us to receive funding. CAGs or COGs are interchangeable. County of Governments, County Association of Governments, but those are in a way counties that have all the participating cities, and all of them are for the purpose of JPA, for the purpose of transportation.
For the most part,
And
transportation,
And
but they take on
primarily. So anyways, I thought that's important because as we're talking about CalCog, COG, MPOs, I think it's important to identify those, that the CAGs are used for the state, MPOs more for the Fed. That be correct?
And MPOs are federally recognized.
Thank you.
We are not a COG, but we're a regional transportation planning agency, an RTPA, and a local transportation commission, and we're a self-help county. We're not a JPA, basically. So we aren't formed by a JPA. We're formed by statute. And if you're formed by a JPA, then you might take on some other regional responsibilities. But we are formed by statute.
Thank you. Now, are those all the items from staff?
Unless anybody else has any other items, yes.
I was just going to make my impressions of CalCog. You know, or the CalCog meetings, if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was about housing and not transportation. It was just every single thing, housing. And, you know, the idea is to centralize housing and put everybody into really high density type of arrangements, you know, with trains and buses and things of that sort. And so you can live in a high rise and then have these little retail things underneath and have little squares that you can go and recreate. and so forth. And I was thinking, I've traveled somewhere where I've seen this before, this model. And then I remembered it was Eastern Europe. Yeah, it was Eastern Europe, and it's a Soviet style type of buildings and so forth.
Lithuania had it.
Yeah, Lithuania, Russia, Poland, and Warsaw, any of these places. And you have 20, 30-story residential places, and you have trains right there, and you have little parks and things of that sort. And so it's really interesting that the central planners in our state, it's nothing new. It's actually been around a long, long time, but it's with Joseph Stalin and Khrushchev and people like that.
Exactly.
It's true. I mean, look up history, read history, and you'll see it's exactly what the case is. People don't like to hear me say that, but it's kind of like any people who have studied history know that it's not and one of the things that I noticed, and I know Natalia's people, they were kind of stunned by one of my comments, but I talked about, it seems like we're going backwards in our state. Our state was developed, with cars as transportation. It's not an old state. And it's not like has high density areas, high density cities like we do on the East Coast. In fact, Boston streets are so narrow. They have it really works well, to have this kind of transportation. But we weren't built that way here in California. But that's what we're looking to do, is to go back to bicycles and trains and buses and things of that sort, and reduce cars. But that's not the way the state was built, so that was another observation I made. It's just, so again, I think that, I was up there getting my award, my Poppy Award, and I mentioned this, and I think that a lot of the younger people, again, maybe from a historical standpoint, don't get it because they've been fed, a lot of this information. But anyway, yeah, there you go. I'm not running again, so it doesn't matter, so. But
One of the current programs that has been developed through the CalCog is REAP. So if you've heard about REAP, the Regional Early Action Program, whatever related to housing as well, and you've received some REAP funding for your housing elements. So that was born through the CalCog effort.
yeah, but it's all about, and the other thing that's happening right now is in Altadena and Palisades, they're looking now to utilize these policies to create more, have people buy these lots and create apartments, and to take away that. And there's a lot of community people who are very concerned about that, because they're saying, wait a minute, we had a community here of single family residences, and now this is the perfect opportunity. And I've read about it in Cal Matters and some of these other things where they're looking at really increasing the density in some of these areas. So it's a concern, and it's like what I look at in the state, it's all about affordable housing, but how about housing that's affordable? There's a big difference.
Right.
So, and the last thing is, there was a session on the Greenlining Institute that Greenlining Institute, if somebody would look it up, they'd realize, they're a very leftist group. They're against measures like what we just passed, the Measure T. They're against bank mergers. They're known to exploit. They're known to extort. And so I let my displeasure be known about this group being given an opportunity to present at CalCog. So we need to keep, we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poitras. I will note that as we left the COG meeting, Supervisor Poitras got on his V10 diesel engine. I saw him down the street 30 miles refueling, but.
Yeah. Well, I just idled just so I could burn up fuel. I wasn't even going anywhere.
No, but thank you. Appreciate a lot of the historic background. It is true. I mean, California was built differently. I think as we're trying to deal with these climate cap ties and what have you, I mean, it takes time, but definitely thanks to you for historical background. Appreciate that. I'm assuming that's all from staff.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to items from Caltrans.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good to be here with you again. As you know, Michael has become the new director of District 6. And in the interim, we'll be backfilling his position temporarily. Michael's doing interviews, and so that person will possibly be on board by the next board meeting. But Jem Peralt and myself will be helping them ensure that the division moves forward and probably be shadowing them at the board meetings just to get their feet wet and ensure that, we're representing and here to answer the questions and provide you guys with the support and the other four MPOs support that you've grown accustomed to. A couple quick things here. So first is the 99 CMCP. I know we give updates all the time. There's going to be a presentation at the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Conference in Merced. And at the end of April, we are set to release the draft report of the CMCP, and we're still on track to complete the final study by the end of June. All right, on to projects. So the first one is the South Madera 6-lane. I know there's been a lot of conversation about this. So we're still currently in the PS&E right-of-way phase. Completion of PS&E is going to be October of this year. Still working with a few property owners to get those finalized, and still slated to start construction in the summer of 2026. Next project is the North Madera 6-lane, which is Avenue 17 to 22. Design has submitted the environmental request and is now working on the request with the remaining functional units. PA and ED is targeting October of 2027. Next is the Downtown Madera CAP-M project. So the utility certification is targeting May of 2025. Ready to list in June, and then construction is targeted to start January of 2026. Next is the 99-233 interchange improvement. So currently it's the 60% constructability review, which is targeting to be next month. And ready to list is target for this summer of 2026, next summer. Next is the Cottonwood Creek Bridge replacement. So construction is anticipated to be completed in May, depending on weather and any other potential delays. So wrapping that one up. Next is the Madera Ranchos rehab. There's a few loose ends, but we're expected to be completing that at the end of next month. And finally, the Chowchilla CAP-M. So the design and right-of-way phases are now underway, and ready to list is targeting November of 2026. And we'll be working on those two items that Supervisor Rogers talked about, as the truck traffic signage, and also the palm trees pruning and maintenance and plan for replacement. And then also, I know Alec talked about the State Route 233. Currently, State Route 145 corridor plan is out for comment. I know we've been working with City and County Madera, MCTC. So we should be coming back to you guys in the next couple months with the final plan on that as well. But we do appreciate all the participation and input that everybody's been providing on those. And then on a side note, I just want to, I completed the call program too, and it was really great to be there at the conference and have a presence of the Valley, with Supervisor Porteous getting an award. Robert Phipps got an award. Ted Smalley was on a panel. Robert was on a panel. And that MCTC has had 3 people out of the 7 cohorts go through the call program. And you have SCAG and Sandag and all these big agencies that send people, and just to have MCTC and Fresno COG have people going through this call program really speaks volumes of the support that the board and the COGs have with the leadership and the presence that we're able to provide throughout the state. So happy to take any questions or any other things you guys want.
Mr. Chair, I just have a question of Caleb, and this is actually I had a conversation with Michael a few weeks ago, Navarro, and it was in regards to a couple of the property owners. It's because I had mentioned in our last meeting, if there's some way we could help, kind of move this thing along. And he was talking about, perhaps, meeting with these property owners, and I could potentially know who they are. And so he was going to get back to me with that information. I haven't heard back from him. I know he's only got, 10,000 priorities and things going on right now. But if you would pass that along to him, just following up on he was going to look into that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I had talked with Michael, I think like last year about 41, like course gold up to Deadwood. He had mentioned that that was a project that was in the pipeline and that they were looking to do some resurfacing there. Additionally, 49 from the Mariposa border to Oakhurst, he had mentioned was also in the pipeline. So I'm hopeful maybe to get an update on those projects when you have an opportunity. And then lastly, pothole at 425A and 41 southbound lane. We've got one at Island Drive on 145 and then on 49 across from the Highway Patrol office. There's a number of potholes there as well. So
I'll give it the after and get those.
appreciate it.
Commissioner Rogers.
Yeah, I had talked with Michael about this as well, just to keep it on your radar. The Fossil Discovery Center, there's an on-ramp or an off-ramp right there. And one of the things that we were interested in was they have the Mammoths crossing in Merced County and in two places, but the actual place of biggest discovery is right in our county. And he said that they were going to try and work something out in the, I guess there's something in the works over there. But I just wanted to keep that on your radar. That particular overpass would be a great spot for some mammoths or even saber-toothed tiger or something like that would be cool.
No cattle crossing. Thank you. Anyone else? I will say long are the days where former supervisor Wheeler would pull out this long list and I know he would go there for a long time and, you shortened that list. So,
It's a testament to Caltrans.
I will say that eastbound on 145 heading just potholes on the right lane. I'm not sure if they've taken care of that and anyone from our city staff may have called you, but I just want to make you guys aware. Those are items from Caltrans. Now items from commissioners. I'll just open it up if anyone has any items they'd like to.
I'd like to bring something up, and I think we mentioned it last meeting, but on March 7th was the last day of the CalCog conference. But that evening in Fresno State had their transportation summit all day, and they had an award ceremony. And our executive director received the Public Agency Employee of the Year award. So I wanted to mention that and praise him. And then there's more. On April 11th in the morning, on the last day of our Valley or our San Joaquin Regional Policy Council meeting, there's going to be a San Joaquin Valley Blueprint Awards ceremony. And there's an award that's being given to the individual who has shown enthusiasm and tenacity in promoting the blueprint principles. And typically they are of the staff of one of the MPOs. And it just so happens that our executive director is on a roll and is going to be receiving the Daryl Hildebrand Blueprint Leadership Award. So it's a high honor and very proud to be of members and commissioners of an agency that have a executive director who is widely recognized by her peers for her excellence in leadership. Thank you.
Mayor, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. I really appreciate your leadership. I think, Ro, you could probably agree that, this is definitely a fire hose and it definitely helps to have people that are, on the commission with a depth of experience. So appreciate your leadership and willingness to step in here. And Rob, I appreciate you not using the word scumbag today. Well, you may have been testing the waters a little bit. You kept it clean. So thank you for that.
No, I
Yes, there was another colleague that used that word, but it was
Yeah.
at another meeting, but yes.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments? I too wanted to echo the same sentiment that my colleague here, Commissioner Whitaker, said about our executive director. She's really been distinguished within the state and within, especially here within our region. So thank you for everything you've done. I also wanted to, obviously you guys are all aware because you guys were all in attendance at yesterday's community hospital reopening. So that's a great thing. We finally got that back up and running. We hope to see that become successful and any partnerships that we can develop to make sure that that continues open. That being said, I will now call for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Okay, second, this meeting is now adjourned.